This is a film about the SLH opening of the SLH Track at South London Harriers at Woodcote School, Coulsdon, in July 2013. The funding came from legacy from John Jewell of £250,000 plus match funding from the Mayor of London and other bodies.
While we're just waiting, you may see we have two Olympic torches. If anyone would like their photo taken after the event and you have your cameras, or if you can find a photographer, you're welcome to come over here and have your photograph taken holding them or with somebody. We just have to make sure that you leave a little deposit, a little bit of cash maybe before you walk away. And the teacher here at Woodcote High School, Mark, has been one of the group, the team has been involved with this pretty well from the beginning, and I'm sure he will mention it. We have been working on this since 2010. So Mark, over to you.
I don't know, actually.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Yes, you're absolutely right, because on a hot summer's evening, very similar to this, on the 21st of July, in fact, 2010, I spoke at a meeting held at the clubhouse of the South London Harriers. The occasion was the launch of the Track Coulsdon project. As an eternal optimist, I spoke of the huge benefits that such a scheme would give to the local community. At the time, I talked about a win-win-win situation. A win for Woodcote High School, a win for the South London Harriers, and a win for the local community. The London Marathon Trust, the Football Foundation, the Mayor of London, Sport England, the Queen Elizabeth II Fields in Trust, the Coulsdon West Residents Association, and the Coulsdon Cluster of Schools have all generously invested in this corner of South London. And our expectation today is that the investment will pay real dividends.
Thank you, Ian. We have two more speakers. Next is Reza Motovassel, who's going to speak, I understand, about the benefits and advantages of having the track at the school. So, Reza, please.
Distinguished guests, fellow students, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honour to have received the privilege of speaking to you this afternoon at the opening of our new athletics track. This is an exciting time for our school, and this track will give the people the opportunity to improve our athletic performance, helping us to develop into better athletes and allowing people to trial sports that they hadn't considered before. Beyond the obvious health benefits, sport teaches us much about life. It teaches us teamwork, how to cooperate with others, and teaches us to work collaboratively to achieve a common goal. Sport also teaches us to cope under pressure and need to persevere with training and practice in order to progress and improve.
We have one last speaker. A little background for the speaker before I introduce him. He was ranked 8th in the world in 1955 in the 110 hurdles. He represented Great Britain at 2 Olympics in Helsinki and in Melbourne, and he won a European Championship silver medal. Here you are, Jack Parker.
Pupils of Woodcote High School, irrepressibles. It's nearly 70 years since I joined SLH, and at last Coulsdon has a track. With Summer's Olympics in mind, I have been asked to talk about the Games, which is a privilege. Stop standing on the flags. I've experienced 4 Olympic Games, 2 as a spectator in London in 1948 and again last year, and 2 as a competitor in Helsinki in 1952 and Melbourne in 1956. After the war, London took on the difficult job of resurrecting them using the old Wembley Stadium. It then only had a roof over the main stand, and it was a wet week. Athletics were housed in the army huts in Richmond Park and at RAF Uxbridge. As recent antagonists, Germany, Italy and Japan were not invited. Most of the medals were won by American and Scandinavian countries, plans which are not being greatly affected by the war. There were 2 irrepressibles competing, Derek Pugh and, of course, as Ian has mentioned, Tom Richards won a silver medal in the marathon. but club members were also in management positions. Billy Holt was the director of organisation, and Don Payne was in charge of track preparation and technical direction. So there's a lot of SLH at the 1948 Olympics. The 1952 Olympics was in Helsinki, with Germany, Italy and Japan returning and Russia sending a team for the first time. Russia still occupied part of Finland, and one of our planes was buzzed by Russian jets en route. The Duke of Edinburgh went out by naval cruiser with a destroyer escort. The Russians were in fact very friendly, and I remember going to a party in their quarters with a table absolutely laden down with smoked salmon and caviar, a bit different from our food rationing at the time. Helsinki was Zatopek's great games. The Czech army officer won the 10,000 metres, the 5,000 metres and then the marathon, and for good measure his wife won the women's javelin. He'd not run a full marathon before. About 20 kilometres, he asked Jim Peters, "Are we going fast enough?" And shortly afterwards he ran away from the field and won by a clear 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The then young Gordon Pirrie was fourth in the 5,000 metres, and our only gold medal was won by a horse, Fox Hunter, ridden by Harry Llewellyn. In the 40s and 50s, there were no world championships every 2 years. The other two games were the European Championships and the Commonwealth Games, and several irrepressibles featured in those at the time. Bert Liffin, late to be the club captain, sprinted in the Oslo 1946 relay. In 1950 in Brussels, Alan Grieve ran in both the 100 metres and the sprint relay, while Derek Pugh actually won 2 gold medals in the 400 metres and the 4x400 relay. In 1954, Peter Driver won the 10,000 metres at the Vancouver Commonwealth Games, and I got a silver in the Bern Championships. So we had quite a lot of SLH people around at the time. But back to the Olympics. In the weeks immediately before the 1956 Melbourne Games, the Suez Canal was nationalised, despite the British and French armies attempting for a short while to stop what was happening. Then Russia invaded Hungary, their tanks rolling into Budapest. Most of the Hungarian Olympic team were on their way to Australia by then, and after the Games many of them never went back, preferring to settle in Melbourne. Once again, the British interest was in the distance events. In the 10,000 metres, after 9 laps, Gordon Pirrie and the Russian sailor Vladimir Kutz were way ahead of everyone else, and locked together for lap after lap after lap, the two of them going round, with Kutz making short, sharp bursts. With just 3 laps remaining, Kutz was feeling exhausted. He stepped to one side and looked at Pirrie, and he saw that Gordon's face was so tired out. He later said, "I realised that Gordon was as exhausted as I was, and he went on to win." If only Gordon in Melbourne had managed to smile and just go by Kutz, Kutz might well have folded, but it was not to be, and so Gordon never got the gold medal that he richly deserved. Gordon went on to take the silver medal in the 5,000 metres, but it was not to be. There was, however, a British gold medalist, Chris Brazier, in the steeplechase. This was surprising to watch, as Chris had never won a 3-age championships. We were sitting there, look, is Chris in the lead? Can't be, but it is. And it was. It was Chris. He had single-mindedly devoted himself to winning in Melbourne, an example of what this approach, being single-minded, can achieve. At the closing ceremony, instead of the competitors marching in ranks like the opening ceremony, we entered the vast Melbourne cricket ground in one intermingled throng, all mixed together, different nationalities and all manner of dresses. This produced a different atmosphere from the usual formal closing, and with the singing of Waltzing Matilda and Near Year Came Back Again, what started as an Olympics held under very difficult circumstances finished on an optimistic note, and Melbourne established itself as one of the world's great cities. The most unexpected thing about last summer's Olympics was the atmosphere in the park and at other venues. Going through the entrance gate was like entering a parallel world, with everyone so friendly and helpful. Now this was just like back at the closing ceremony in Melbourne 60 years ago, Over the years, the Olympic movement have managed to retain being an event where the young people in the world come together in friendship. Most of the hundreds of competitors have no chance of a medal. It's just the opportunity of taking part which attracts them. There have been changes. Very few people had cars in my time. Just think of it, no cars. I remember lugging my canvas holdall containing kit, starting blocks, hammer and nails, because it was cinder tracks, standing up on a trolley bus from Hammersmith to White City to compete against visiting Americans, and paying the bus fare myself. From being purely amateur, athletics has passed through a period of undercover payments to today's professionalism. If someone's main talents are in sport, he or she should be allowed the opportunity to be paid for it. And even today, apart from football, rugby and cricket, very few people can indeed pay the mortgage from sports earnings. Unfortunately, drugs are in the news again. I wondered about drugs, but making this talk I felt I couldn't miss it. But I can't say much as I've never taken much interest and have no knowledgeable comments. Certainly drugs were much more widely used in the Eastern European countries in the 60s than they are today. You know, whole gangs of people were on them. And we can say one thing about athletics. Jack Rogge, the Olympics chief, who is himself a doctor, is particularly tough on drugs. But with such large amounts of money kicking around, there will always be some risk of unscrupulous folk producing new types of drugs. And all sports are a risk, make no doubt about it. I do find the Diamond League distance races rather strange, with everyone wearing identical vests. And the fields numbering 20 seems absolutely crazy. Do you know, in my time, Harold Abrahams used to argue that 1,500 metres should be just 6, not 8, to avoid barging. There are many different sports available now, but track and field retains wide affection throughout the world. It's marvellous that Woodcote High School decided to build this track, and I hope that many of you pupils will make full use of it and experience the pleasure and satisfaction which the sport can be. It doesn't matter whether you compete from school, club, county or country. It's a matter of taking part. And SLH now has this track near its clubhouse, so together with Crystal Palace has the opportunity to be one of the strongest track clubs around again. Thank you.
The main group here, and also as we mentioned to Stephen Callan, Steve Rigby, Rosa Vigiani, and all the others who have contributed in one way, shape or form to bring this track to us today. The ribbon is there ready now, so if you'd like to go along to the finishing line where the ribbon will be cut by...
And here is the opening run. And they'll be doing some training tonight at 7 o'clock. And people are walking around now to experience it.
You know, a bit tricky giving up the job.